cakes then?
I popped in on this Friday
Yeah.
and had a long chat.
Ready, Chair.
I'll now call to order the Planning Advisory Committee. Before we continue with our agenda, I just would like to take a moment to remember our chair, John Wanless, who passed away in February. John was an invaluable member to this committee and to the town of Smith Falls. So if we could take a moment of silence to remember him. Thank you, everyone. Thank you. On March 13th, 2025, we acknowledge that this is a sacred land on which Smith Falls is now located, has been the site of human activity for over 10,000 years, and is rich in Indigenous history. This land is the ancestral and unceded territory of the Algonquin and Anishinaabe Nation. We are grateful to the Algonquin ancestors who cared for the land and the water in order that we might meet here today. We are also grateful to the Algonquin people for their contribution in the making of the Rideau Canal, which runs through Smith Falls. We are mindful of broken covenants and the need to reconcile with all of our relations. Together, may we care for the land and each other, drawing on strength of our mutual history of nation building through peace and friendship, being mindful for generations to come. I am Jacqueline Grimes, the Vice Chair of the Planning Advisory Committee. I will now take attendance of the committee members. Councillor Jay Brennan.
Present.
Councillor Stephen Robinson.
Present.
Yvonne Robert.
Present.
Mary Remig.
Present.
And Stephen McGuire.
Present.
Okay, number 2, approval of the agenda. Can I have a motion? Moved by Stephen, seconded by Mary. All in favor? Carried. Adoption of minutes. Planning Advisory Committee meeting November 14th, 2024. Can I have a motion? Moved by Stephen, seconded by Yvonne. All in favor? Carried. Disclosure of monetary interests.
Just in accordance with our procedure bylaw, Madam Chair, I was absent from the November 14th, 2024 meeting because I declared a conflict with what I believe was 144 Beckwith Street North. So not a monetary interest, but just out of precaution, I declared a monetary interest as I was file lead on this when I was employed with the town.
Okay, thank you. All right, number 5, public meeting. We'll now open the public portion meeting of the Planning Advisory Committee meeting to consider 2 applications. One consent application B25-01, 8 Main Street East, and one minor variance application MV 25-01, 7 William Street East. The purpose of the consent application B25-01 is to request access from the contributing subject property 8 Main Street East via a right-of-way over Part 3 on Plan 27R-2738, which will allow parking at 7 William Street East. The purpose of the minor variance application MV 25-01 is to seek relief for several provisions of the zoning bylaw to facilitate a mixed-use multi-unit development at 7 William Street, comprised of a 3-unit rental apartment dwelling with a ground floor commercial unit. We will address these applications separately. First, we will consider the consent application. The minor variance application portion of the report will be presented after the decision for the consent has been reached. This meeting is your opportunity to provide feedback on these applications, and the Planning Advisory Committee welcomes any questions and comments you may have. We encourage you to do so at this public meeting, as the Planning Act rules suggest that the public's ability to voice objections later in the process may be limited if written or oral comment is not submitted. The Planning Advisory Committee is the approval authority for both consent and minor variance applications. The committee will review these applications and consider comment from the public to inform their decisions on each of these applications. I will now pass the meeting over to Richard Grant, Planner 1, to report on the notification and summary of consent application B25-01, 8 Main Street East. Following his presentation, we will open the floor to comment from the public. If the applicants or their agent in attendance will also have an opportunity to address any concerns brought to the floor by the public. Richard?
Okay. In January 2025, the town received two applications, a minor variance application, MV-2501, and consent application B2501. These two applications will be to facilitate the development of proposed mixed-use multi-unit building at 7 William Street East. Now, looking into the development proposal, on the ground floor, there will be a commercial unit in the front and a residential unit in the back on the ground floor and an amenity space as well. On the second floor, there'll be two residential units. There'll be 4 parking stalls underneath the second floor between the 4 cantilever posts, and access will be provided via a 3.12 meter wide right-of-way off William Street running parallel to the subject property. Here we can see the key map for the consent, and it just shows you the configuration of the subject property in black. And then if you look to the right in white, to show you the development lot at 7 William Street East. And you can see the right-of-way that runs parallel to the development lot. And we'll get more granular as we go along in the slides. On the site sketch provided by the applicants, it's a little bit clearer to see the right-of-way that is being requested in orange. So this shows you just the right-of-way as in relationship to the development lot at 7 William Street East. So the requested right-of-way is actually the orange piece at the rear, just for context. Looking at the architectural drawings, in the front we can see the proposed commercial unit, and the residential unit would be in the rear. I don't know if you can see the colors on the screen, and the interior amenity space, which is 4.1 meters in area, is at the back. So we have the commercial in the front, residential in the middle, and interior amenity space in the back. And beneath, and I guess beyond the amenity space would be the parking stall. So this is just the ground floor. And then we're looking at the second floor, and we're seeing the 2 residential units. And then we're looking at the elevation. So this would be the front and the side elevation of the proposed multi-unit dwelling. And then we're looking at the rear and the side. So this is the back end of the property. And if you're looking at those sticks at the end, those would be the cantilever post where the proposed parking will be. Now, as discussed earlier, the purpose of the consent application B2501 is to secure legal access from 8 Main Street East via a right-of-way. The right-of-way measures 7.83 times 3.21 meters. The requested right-of-way will provide space to create a functional driving aisle measuring 6.7 meters, allowing access to the parking lot at the rear of the proposed development at 7 William Street East. Looking at the application history for 7 William Street East, in 2022, applicants requested an easement B22. Through application B2203, applicants requested to create a development lot called 7 William Street East. Part of the conditions is that if they were able to create the freehold lot, they would also need to have a development agreement in addition to developing the lot. Looking at the other applications, there's B2204, which created an easement which benefited 7 William Street East, and application B2205 also created an easement which benefited 7 William Street East. It's a little bit clearer on the property survey. So in green, we have the development lot that will be created as part of this consent process. Well, will be created as a condition of this consent process. Looking at the blue, we see parts 2 and 3. And that was created. That easement was created through applications B2204, and part 3, which is the blue, is what is being requested through application B2501, which is the application today. And in red, we see the subject property, which is 8 Main, which is requesting that access be provided from the subject property here. Looking at the site, we can see that it is a rectangular lot and it is mostly gravel. It's hard to see because of the snow in this picture here. And in the rear of the lot, we see the hydro poles in the back. And the lot measures 339 meters squared, just for reference. So we see another view from William Street, and then here we see the interior view. And so where you see the hydro pole, that gives you a rough reference as to the full extent of where the lot ends. So where the hydro pole is situated, that would be what we consider the end of the lot. Another view here just shows you just like, I guess, more full-on view of what the back of the lot looks like. If you see a lot of the snow tracks coming in, that would be roughly where the right-of-way exists right now. So essentially what they're looking to do is to get legal access to a portion of that right-of-way so that they can properly access the lot when they're creating their proposed development. As part of the process, consultation is an integral part of the planning process. We received feedback from the Department of Public Works, the Chief Building Official, and Hydro One Networks. With respect to the building official, he had no objections to this proposal and had no comments at this time. With respect to Public Works, they did not object to this proposal, but they recommended that as part of the parking suitability that it be confirmed by a PN or transportation consultant. At the site plan stage, they recommended that a grading and drainage plan, a stormwater management brief, and a service brief be provided as part of the site plan approval process. Looking at the comments from Hydro One, they also did not object to this proposal. They recommended that a utility easement measuring 3 meters wide and approximately 23 meters long be established on the subject property. And they also recommended that due to the location of the hydro wire, that they either relocate the hydro wire, or they maintain a building height of 3.17 meters to avoid the underhang of the service wire. As part of the review process, the staff looked at several sections of the OP, such as downtown core, infrastructure, and the targeted growth areas, as well as the downtown core provisions of the zoning bylaw. Staff have determined that there are no specific provisions relating to the creation of right-of-ways between private properties, nor does it provide any direction for the approval authority, which is this committee right here. However, the requested relief enables the proposed development, and staff consider it to apply with the downtown core official designation. We also looked at the PPS, which supports a variety of housing opportunities, as well as appropriate locations for intensification, along with planned infrastructure. Looking at a review of the application, staff are of the opinion that the right-of-way operates as a means of access, and on principle supports the compatibility of the subject property with neighboring lots. The current use of the right-of-way is just to facilitate access to the rear of the lot for properties fronting along Main Street East, as well as Beckwith Street North. In terms of adequacy of vehicular access, water supply, and sewage disposal, staff are of the opinion that these aspects are not relevant in assessing the requested right-of-way. Technical details regarding servicing and site circulation will be addressed in detail at a future site plan control application. In terms of land use suitability, staff are of the opinion that the requested right-of-way creates a functional driving aisle, enabling a zoning compliant parking stall, which is critical to the development of the proposed lot at 7 William Street East. Staff are of the opinion that application 2501 broadly meets the intent of the PPS, the official plan, and should be given favorable consideration by the committee, subject to the conditions outlined.
Thank you, Richard. We will begin by hearing from the applicants for any additional information or presentation as it relates to the consent application.
Hi there, my name is Krista Lindman. I'm a lawyer. I'll come up. Here. Agent for the applicant. I think Richard's presentation covered everything very well. One thing that I did just want to clarify is that the right-of-way will only be accessed from William Street. We won't be coming in from Main Street. So it's just tacked on to the back of the previous two rights of way that were granted from William Street. But otherwise, I think Richard covered everything very well, and I do think it meets the criteria under the Planning Act, and would be very happy if you would grant the consent today.
Thank you.
If you have any questions.
Questions?
Okay,
Thank you.
thank you.
We will now hear from any members of the public who wish to speak. All comments and questions need to be addressed to the chair. Please be advised that verbal comments form part of the public record, and as such, we ask that you please state your name and address before providing verbal comment. Any members of the public who wish to speak to this application are asked to approach the podium one at a time. And I don't believe there are any members. Okay. So are there any questions or comments from committee members?
Thank you. I don't have any questions. I do have a comment. After reviewing everything that we got, I think it's a pretty good use of land, and I'm in favor of supporting the staff recommendation.
Okay.
I agree. We've got a downtown core that's old, so it's going to have all these nooks and warrens, and it is a good use of the space.
I guess just a quick one. I do have a slightly adjusted report in front of me from what I think I reviewed earlier this week. Just how does this affect the initial consent for the property? Is there a condition or any of that matter that folds into this application? Or do we feel that this consent application can be approved on its own and doesn't need to be tied in with the previous?
So with relation to the previous consents, how they're related is that for B2203, one of the conditions was that if, say, 17 to 23 Beckwith does not get redeveloped, that the 7 William that's created as part of the consent will be later on developed so that it does not remain vacant. That was a condition of B2203. So the idea is that once we are facilitating access and conditional approval is granted, then the lot is functional, and therefore that condition where we're looking to make sure that the law is functional is met, and it allows for the development of 7 William, which just kind of checks off that box.
So, sorry, just to clarify, that previous application,
Yes.
2022, I think you said?
Yep.
My memory doesn't serve me right. Anyways, does it also establish that first half of the easement that connects to William Street? And is there any value in us approving this consent without a condition that makes this application contingent on the completion of that application so that the easement is fully complete?
So we did think about that. So that condition for meeting that condition for 2203 is tacked onto the minor variance.
Right.
So we haven't neglected it. So the approval of the 2203 and 2501 is sort of tied together. So if we're allowing approval for this condition, it allows for the condition of 2203 because they're kind of tied together. They need both of them to kind of work. Without legal access, the lot doesn't work, so you can't develop it. So they're kind of tied together, but those two conditions are tacked onto the minor variance application.
So just to agree with my colleagues, Madam Chair, I don't have any concern with the application. I just know that the parcel fabric back behind that block can be a little messy in terms of the amount of easements and crossing over with the parking situation. My concern really is just making sure that easement is fully complete, and that if we fulfill the conditions of this one consent application on its own, that we don't create this one piece of easement that is not attached to an easement that accesses the street. So as long as the conditions for this consent application ensure that that easement is complete and that one consent application is contingent on the other, I am full support.
Okay.
Jay?
Thanks. Yeah, I support the staff recommendation. This property is, I think what mildly saying is challenging. And I think the applicant has made a really good effort to provide some intensification in our downtown with some people living down there. So I applaud them and I applaud staff for their work on this. So I support it.
Stephen, any comment?
No, nothing more to add. Thanks.
All right, thank you. The committee is tasked with deciding on this application. If the committee is ready to do so, I will now entertain a motion to approve, not approve, or any other decision.
Approved. I make motion to approve as recommended by staff.
Okay, seconded by Steve. All in favor? Carried. I will now pass the meeting back over to Richard Grant, Planner 1, to report on the notification and summary of minor variance application MV-2501, 7 William Street East. Following his presentation on the minor variance application, we will once again open the floor to comments from the applicant and the public. The applicants or their agents in attendance will once again have an opportunity to address any concerns brought to the floor by the public.
Okay. So here I have a summary of the requested reliefs that the applicants are looking for. So from section 11.2.1, lot building requirements for permitted non-residential uses, the applicants have requested a minimum building height of 6.38, and that's from the required height of 11 meters. So 6.8 is roughly 2 stories, and the zoning bylaw requires 11 meters in a downtown core. Looking at section 4.28.10 minimum aisle width, the minimum aisle width for, regular parking is 6.7. The applicants are looking at 3.64. For section 11.2.2, lot building requirements for permitted residential uses, applicants are looking to convert the minimum landscape open space into an interior amenity space, and they have also requested that that space be 4.18. The zoning bylaw requires that for each unit, it be 15 meters. So with 3 units, we're going to have 45 meters squared minimum, and the applicants are looking at 4.18 minimum. As part of the minor variance process, they have to meet the 4 tests for the committee to grant a variance. Looking at the zoning bylaw, for request number 1, which would be to have a reduction in the minimum height building from 11 meters to 6.8, staff consider the request to be conform with the zoning bylaw because it demonstrates a reasonable sense of scale and maintains a neighborhood character. Essentially what I'm saying is that all the streets on Main Street, on William Street East, they're roughly 2 stories or lower. So this proposed building being 2 stories does not alter the existing character. Hydro 1 recommends that the proposed building either maintain a height of 3.17 to avoid the overhang or to relocate the pole that is at the back of the lot. So that is something that they have to contend with if they're going to get their requested relief. For request number 2, looking at the minimum driving aisle width to be 3.64, staff are of the opinion that if conditional approval is granted for application B2501, then legal access will be provided, and there would be, so all that we have now is a physical space to maintain. So staff would consider that this request conforms. Looking at request number 3, to reduce the proposed indoor amenity space from 4 to 5 meters squared to 4.18, staff do not think that this represents a meaningful interpretation of an indoor amenity space and propose a modification to a size of 10 meters squared on the basis that it allows for sufficient interaction. To put it into perspective, 4.18 is roughly the size of a standard king size bed, which is 41.58 square feet. So that's basically 6.3 times 6.6 feet if you're looking at just the dimensions. So that's just relatively how big this interior amenity space is proposed to be. So staff are recommending that the size be a lot larger just to accommodate more functional use. Looking at if it's desirable, looking at the request number 1, staff consider it to be desirable because, yes, again, it conforms to the prevailing neighborhood character, being 2 stories in height. For the requested relief for number 2, the minimum driving aisle allows for a functional right-of-way so long as a conditional approval is granted. And for request number 3, we consider it to be not desirable because it is, again, considered to be too small to be functional. Looking at test number 4, if it's minor impact in nature, staff consider request number 1 to be minor in nature because the established character has not changed. For request number 2, we consider it to be minor in nature because physical space exists and this is really just a process of providing legal access. Looking at request number 3, we consider the proposed space to be too small and such it has more of a, major impact. So it's not minor. Hence the recommendation for 10.2 meters for interior amenity space. So here would be the summary of our recommendations. So approving the recommended height of 6.38 and recommending that the driving aisle for 3.64 be approved and that the requested interior amenity space of 4.18 be increased to 10 meters. And here would be the staff recommendation. Is it coming back online? There we go. Yeah, so the staff recommendation is to permit the requested driving aisle and the requested building height and to modify the amenity space to be 10 meters and that they comply with Hydro 1's requirements for either relocating or reducing the height of the building and that they also go through the process of adhering to the downtown core design guidelines and getting a grading and drainage plan and all the typical things required for a site plan, as well as a survey, and that consent applications B2501 and 2203 gets final approval.
Thank you, Richard. We will begin by hearing from the applicants for any additional information or presentation as it relates to the minor variance application.
Hello, everyone. So my name is Kareem from Dream Life Design Build. As we were planning the design of this building, there was a bit, due to the limitations of the lot, the size of the lot, how narrow it was, we tried to come up with a layout and design that makes it feasible for the tenants to live in the building, as well as try to meet the zoning bylaw as much as we can. So in terms of the indoor amenity space, I want to clarify, I want to elaborate on Richard's presentation, good presentation, no? It's not really a complete indoor amenity space because the way we designed it, we're going to do like door openings on both sides. So it's not like it's going to be a completely closed space. So there's going to be fresh air that comes in and out because there's no swinging door. It's just a door opening on both sides where people can see outside, people can see inside. So it feels like you're sitting outside, but you're inside with a roof above. And we're planning to landscape it with grass on the floor, put like 2 park benches, put like say a couple of plants and make it feel like a landscape space as well. In terms of making it bigger, the space is really tight to make it bigger because we have to consider the building code requirements as well. If we were to push the building closer to the front property line, we could make it bigger, but there's other building code requirements in terms of sizes of windows and fire rated windows that don't allow us to push the building closer to the front property line because we have to stay a minimum of 1.5 meters from the front property line in order to not use fire rated windows which aren't allowed to open, which wouldn't be feasible for the tenants because people need ventilation in their units.
Any questions?
I have one.
Great.
Sorry, so I just want to understand your next comment more in the context of my question. So the downtown core zone does allow for a minimum open usable roof space of 5 meters square per unit.
Yes.
I understand what you were saying there about needing ventilation per unit, but was that considered structurally before doing the shared open space? And is it something that could be considered in lieu?
To make the roof an open space?
So what it says is the minimum landscape open space provision shall not apply to dwelling units in a portion of a non-residential building, provided that all dwelling units have access to a private balcony or to an open roof deck with not less than 5 meters square per unit.
we could add a balcony to the second floor unit where that overhang of the roof is, so that can have its own private balcony, and the amenity space could be a shared space for the other 2 units.
I have no questions. Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
We will now hear from any members of the public who wish to speak. All comments and questions need to be addressed to the chair. Please be advised that verbal comment form part of the public record, and as such, we ask that you please state your name and address before providing a verbal comment. Any members of the public who wish to speak to this application are asked to address the podium one at a time. There's no members of the public.
I'm just going to add a few things
Sure.
to what Kareem said, with more of a focus on the 4 tests. So as we discussed in the consent application portion of the meeting, it's quite a constrained lot. And to build a functional building, there had to be sort of a balancing of variances, or a choosing of variances, a selection of what would we vary and what would we meet. So for example, landscape open space could have been provided if we were seeking not to provide all of the parking spaces. But the parking spaces were deemed more appropriate or more useful for the development of the property. And so we're here seeking that reduction in the landscape open space. I think I would say that the test of minor is whether or not there's an impact on the surrounding neighbors, on the community as a whole. In the area that we're looking at, it's a fully developed block in 2 sides with potential for full development all the way around. And this would be a hidden interior portion of a block. There is no other green space within the block, although the block is downtown, very close to green spaces right here at Town Hall, a nice big front yard that they can access, the Rideau Canal not too far away. And so I think the utility for the residents is not fully required in this location, being close to downtown with other amenities. And I don't think there's an impact in the reduction that's proposed for others. Tenants will know what they're renting. If they come to and choose to rent one of these units, they will know that it doesn't have a large amenity space or any greenery on the site, but they'll know that they're in a downtown core that offers greenery in other places. So I think I discussed with Richard his recommendation of 10 square meters. We can't do that within the building and have the building remain functional. I talked with my client and with the designer yesterday at great length about how we could squeeze it in. And that's really what you would be doing, squeezing it in to the detriment of the units themselves. And so we also discussed the balcony. So definitely a balcony is an option for the front unit on the 2nd story. And I think from my perspective, it does meet the 4 tests. We're in a downtown core zone, adding mixed-use development, 3 residential units, fully providing parking, cleaning up kind of a derelict lot at the moment, a vacant lot, and with very little impact on the surrounding neighborhood. So I would ask the Planning Advisory Committee to approve the variance as requested. As an alternative, if you're into considering alternatives, I would suggest maybe a full removal of the requirement. We're not adding a lot with this 4 square meters. I think we can all admit that. It's a little bit of space for folks to gather, but if you feel that it's not a functional space and you would prefer to reduce the requirement to 0, I think that would also be in accordance with the 4 tests under the Planning Act, and there would be no impact on the surrounding area or for the tenants. So something else to consider. Happy to answer any questions.
Right. Any questions from the committee for the applicant?
Thank you.
Any further discussion from the committee? Okay. Committee is tasked with deciding on this application. If the committee is ready to do so, we'll now entertain a motion to approve, not approve, or any other decision.
I do have a question, sorry.
Oh, okay.
It's regarding the transportation consultant review.
Yep.
I know that suggest that that could be
Circle back.
done during the site plan.
Yeah, I'm listening.
Oh, sorry.
I'm going back to the images so you can see the
Oh,
site,
I
the
don't need
drawings.
the images.
No?
I'm wondering whether the committee should give a little bit of teeth to the Director of Public Works as making that a condition of the minor variance, that they have to have that consultation? Or does our development, site plan development process address that?
So, well, through you, Madam Chair. Yeah, so for the functionality of the parking lot, we thought it best that it be addressed at site plan stage, so long as, there's provided parking zoning is confirmed. Whether or not the parking is optimal, we couldn't be completely sure because we're not experts in that matter. So instead of tacking it on as a condition of this process, we thought it best to address it at the site plan stage where we have a better understanding when there are more studies being done, because as part of the site plan, you'll need a grading and drainage plan, all these other tests that will sort of inform how and best to address the parking at that point.
Agreed. I guess I'm just looking to consider whether, if this committee said it was a condition that that plan had to be done, or that had to be done by an expert third party, that we're standing behind that and saying, yes, let's do that, I guess.
That's a committee decision. If you feel it's as a condition, you can make that recommendation.
Do you mind if we just go back to the slide with the conditions on it?
Sure.
I just don't have the report in front of me.
So where are we? Minor variance, and then we're here for condition 4 and 5.
I shared.
So this is 4 and 5. Do you want to see the first 3?
Madam Chair, if I may?
Yes.
I'm going to be inclined to agree with Yvonne. I do think that it would give staff more leverage to ask for this during the site plan stage, to make sure that, other than the comment received from staff during the minor variance review, that by us putting it a condition of minor variance in that regard, that it would give staff more leverage to make sure that that occurs at the site plan stage.
Okay.
Question, comment?
Yeah, I understand where you're coming from. I'm just concerned that this might get us into a catch-22 if we're not zoning compliant, because the minor variance isn't approved, it's conditional. Can they provide approval of the site plan without zoning compliance? And are we just getting into a chicken and egg scenario?
The parking study, or rather the parking review, turns out the parking isn't functional, then technically yes, the minor variance wouldn't be met because that condition would be outstanding. So they'd have to create a functional parking lot or abandon their request relief.
So I'd say the lot isn't buildable until it has site plan control. And so that gives you the teeth that you're looking for. Site plan is the ultimate requirement before they can get their building permit. And if staff isn't satisfied with functionality of the parking lot, then the variances can't be implemented because we can't get a permit. I think it has the teeth that you're looking for.
If I am reading the comments of Public Works though directly, the concern seems to be primarily structural. Do I understand that? It seems that we do not have the expertise in office, because there's going to be, if I read this correctly, a portion of the building that will go over parking, or supports or structural components in between the parking spaces. So I guess my opinion as a committee member is that I'm not sure that a building permit can be achieved if something happens, that a review by a transportation consultant comes back and they're not satisfied with the building design and the use of cantilevers.
Any comment, Richard?
I'm thinking, one sec. So you're saying that if the parking study confirms that the parking lot is not functional, then you won't have a mechanism to enforce functionality? Is that your concern?
Richard, maybe we can hear from Carl for a second.
Yeah, so I think, through you, Madam Chair, thank you. I think the issue is, and what staff based on what we have right now, are not prepared to commit to is that is the functionality of the space. So we have, as you can see, we have the 3-meter easement that runs along the property, and now through that consent runs to the very rear of the property. So typically through the site plan process, we want to ensure that a vehicle can enter and exit those parking spaces. So yes, we want to make sure there is that structural element. Obviously, we need zoning compliant parking spaces, and the cantilever posts, the engineer will align those cantilever posts to make sure that they leave 4 parking spaces that have the adequate width so cars can actually park in there. But also we need to make sure that cars, especially the parking space to the very rear at the very back of the property, has functional space to back out and drive down that parking aisle out to William Street. It would seem awkward to me if their only alternative is to back out the whole way there. But either way, that was one thing that the Public Works Department had requested, and certainly staff would support, is having a transportation engineer verify the usability of the space that way. So I think Yvonne's suggestion is good and potential, and as an option, I recommend perhaps if the committee would like to sort of augment condition 4 to specifically state that, and I'll let you wordsmith. I'm just trying to think here quickly on the fly, but specifically state that access, or I guess we have access, that circulation on the site be confirmed through, and not just access, but also circulation on the site be confirmed through through a professional assessment as deemed necessary by the town. Would that address your concern, Yvonne?
As deemed necessary does, yeah.
Yeah, so what that would look like, who does that process that it unfolds would be managed through the site plan process. But at the end of the day, we cannot issue site plan approval if there is no safe, for an unfunctional site, if there's no safe way for vehicles to enter, leave, and to sort of back out and maneuver. So typically what would, if we had an abundance of space, then we'd be looking at a little bit more land around there to sort of back up to maneuver all of that. We don't have that. It's a constrained site. So I think we need to pay that extra level of attention, typically through the site plan process, to make sure that the parking spaces are actually usable in addition to being zoning compliant.
Comment from the applicant.
What I want to say is, as I was doing the design as a designer, I took in consideration what Kyle said, and I aligned the posts that they're not in any way of the parking spaces. The posts the way that I laid out the post is it lies in between the parking spaces, like on the line. So there's enough room for cars to go in and out.
Thank you. Is there any other comment, committee members?
This one's regarding landscape open space. Sorry, Madam. Sure. My mayor's Madam. Anyway, so sorry, Madam Chair, through you. So I guess I'm interested in hearing the committee's thoughts on the proposed condition as it relates to the landscape open space. There does seem to be some opportunity for achieving closer compliance with a balcony versus or potential opportunity to have closer compliance versus requiring an entire building design to increase the space from the just under 5 meters square to 10 meters square. I'm curious what committee members' thoughts are on that condition and whether or not there is wiggle room for that 10 meter square requirement to maybe spread out over balcony and or communal space or landscape space or something of that nature, so that there's more flexibility in that condition.
So just to clarify, you're talking about keeping the 4.18 and adding a balcony?
Potentially to achieve the 10 meter square instead of just limiting it to landscape open space.
Do you have comment on that? Jay?
Yeah, I don't disagree with that. I mean, as I said before, this is an intensification effort on a very challenging property in the middle of the downtown core. So my interest would be to work with the applicant to ensure that this thing gets built. So I don't know that having a big communal space is that important. So I'd be interested to hear from my colleagues about what Mary was talking about with the balcony and achieving the 10 meters through that process. But I don't think that the open space landscape should be a showstopper for us.
Just a question, without looking at the measurements of the front of the building, what does that balcony, if a balcony was added, do we achieve the 10 meter? I would think it's even more than that.
So if the balcony was added where, sorry?
To the front. Is that where you were talking? Was the front?
It's where the
Like right here?
Yeah, right there.
Okay.
I think that's roughly 50 square feet or something like that, or 60 square feet.
But then you're only gaining that on one unit.
Hmm?
That's correct. I guess my question was, do we achieve the 10 meter squares? I think we more than achieve that with a balcony.
Oh, well, so if you're adding another balcony, there's no real like limitations of where it can be. The size can be, so there's going to be 5 meters. So it could be in the back or in the front. The location can be adjusted so long as the projections are fine. Like how long it gets into the, I guess, beyond the building envelope. If the building were supposed to have the balcony in the front, there's at least 1.34 meters to the lot line, so there's enough space where I think it can accommodate the balcony for be projecting outward, so long as it maintains within the envelope. So I think there'll be space for it, but we'll have to see a drawing. Like I don't know necessarily how it all will be configured, so I think the condition would be met. We just have to do a review at the end to confirm.
It says on the roof. It's roughly 22 feet, I think, by 4 feet.
Balcony?
Yeah. Sorry, 20 feet by 4 feet, because there's a 1 foot opening for the roof on each side.
Right, okay.
It's huge. Any other comment about the balcony option? Yes.
Should there be a requirement for a balcony, but not necessarily a size, since we don't know how big it could be? A functional balcony to staff's approval, something like that.
To achieve the 10 meter.
I don't know if we'll be able to achieve 10 meters. That's my concern.
It seems very too much for the slot.
So just by my calculations, just based on this discussion here, saying that it was roughly 4 feet by roughly 22 feet. Is that what we've been over?
Roughly.
Roughly. So I mean, I'm estimating about 8 meters square for a front balcony, just over actually. So together with the almost 5 visits for the back, that would be a few square meters over the 10 meters suggested by staff. So there may be some wiggle room there if we offer that flexibility of a mix of what they already have with the potential balcony incorporated design to achieve what staff are suggesting at the 10 meters square.
I would actually tend to go along with that, because the little indoor space isn't really big enough to put 3 people in. So if that can be incorporated, I'm all for it, because I don't want it to be a deal breaker.
Richard, did you have a comment?
Well, yes, I'm trying to clarify the wording here. So with the I don't recall it, combination of living interior space and exterior space would have a total of 10 meters. Is that the idea? Like they combine inside and outside spaces would have a total of 10 meters?
Correct.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right.
Any further comments?
I just have a quick question about, sorry, Madam Chair.
Yes.
The requirement for the 10 meters squared, that's a town requirement or a provincial requirement?
Zoning, so it's town.
Okay. And the balcony space will be available to one unit within the building?
That's the idea.
Okay.
Are we ready to make a decision?
Or just for the committee's just looking for the committee's direction as it relates to the previous conversation with respect to
That's the next question.
access and circulation. Is the committee comfortable with condition 4 as worded, or would you like to see wording tweaks to sort of expand and clarify your interest in managing circulation through the site plan process and satisfaction of staff?
One?
I was hoping that somebody took notes of what you said before in order to get to that point.
I took a few notes, but I haven't wordsmithed it yet. I'm still trying to put it together.
Carl?
So this is for condition number 4, right?
Yes.
Okay.
So would, just putting it out there for the committee's consideration, adding after access, adding the words functional circulation, and then after design considerations, adding the word to the satisfaction of the town provides a little bit more clarity. Would that address your comments, Yvonne?
Yes.
Should it be molecular circulation?
So we after access, functional circulation to the satisfaction of the town, and then that's it?
Functional satisfaction, to the satisfaction of the town would be after design considerations.
Okay.
So two,
Yep.
a couple of little wording additions there.
Okay, making that change right now, and then I'll make the next one. Functional access to the parking stall, to the parking area. So is functional access to the parking area? Satisfaction of the town. The owner obtain site plan approval from the town, which will enable a development that is consistent with the town's downtown core design guidelines as approved by council, and manages grading and drainage, stormwater management, functional access to the parking area, and other site and design considerations in a way that minimizes the impact of municipal services and adjacent properties to the satisfaction of the town. Does that make sense? Okay. And then we're looking at condition number 3 about the interior space. Okay. For combined interior and amenity space. For combined. Okay, so the decision shall apply to permit a combined interior amenity space and open livable space for a maximum area of 10 meters squared for the proposed mixed-use development at 7 William Street East. Does that make sense to anyone? Okay.
Okay. So with those changes made to the conditions, are we ready to make a motion? Jay? Seconded by? Yvonne? All in favor? Carried. Okay. Thank you for attending and participating in the planning process for applications B25-01 and MV25-01. Anyone requiring further notice regarding this application is asked to leave their full name and mailing and or email address on the sign-in sheet located by the table at the door. Appeal rights as prescribed by the Planning Act will be outlined in the notice of decision. If you have any questions on the application or the process, I invite you to contact Planner 1 or the planning clerk. This concludes the public meeting portion of the Planning Advisory Committee meeting. We will now move on to the next item on our agenda. Number 6, priority issues, appointment of committee chair. Ron?
I would like to nominate Vice Chair Jay Grimes as our new committee chair.
I accept. Okay.
I said, are you accepting
Yes.
of that? I will second that then.
Right. So I read the motion now then? Okay. So a motion that the Planning Advisory Committee meeting hereby appoints Jacqueline Grimes as the chair of the Planning Advisory Committee. Moved by Yvonne, seconded by Mary. Do we have to do an all in favor?
Carried, yeah.
Gary, all in favor? Okay. Thank you. So vice chair. Is there any nominations for vice chair? Jay?
I'd like to nominate Yvonne Robert as vice chair of the Planning Advisory Committee.
Okay. Let me make comment. I mean, there will be applications that I have conflict, just my nature of my business.
Okay.
So are you comfortable with that?
Yes.
Okay.
I think so.
Okay.
I'll second that.
Okay. So a motion that the Planning Advisory Committee hereby appoints Yvonne Robert as Vice Chair of the Planning Advisory Committee, moved by Jay, seconded by Stephen. All in favor? Carried.
Do what I would have.
So appointment of Secretary Treasurer.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and congratulations on your appointment.
Thank you.
So this is also a very important role. The Secretary Treasurer of the committee is not a committee member; it's usually a municipal employee, and that role is actually described in the Planning Act as one of not a whole lot of specific roles that are described in the Planning Act, but the Act doesn't give a whole lot of detail on what that role does. But typically, a Secretary Treasurer is sort of the administrative function of the committee. So responsible for notification, curating decisions, managing the honorariums. The Secretary Treasurer is generally going to be your first point of contact for most operational committee business, and sort of act as the reporting secretary of the committee as well. So normally the role is with the planning, with the town's planning clerk. So with Marie being new on the job, I've sort of been operating as the nominal Secretary Treasurer for the past number of months. However, the plan and the goal would always be that Marie would eventually step up onto that role. She has gained a tremendous amount of experience in her last several months in the job, has now completed the primary planning course with AMCTO. So my recommendation at this point is that the committee appoints Marie Elmsley as the Secretary Treasurer for the committee, and myself as the alternate.
I have a motion. And so a motion that the Planning Advisory Committee hereby appoints Planning Clerk Marie Elmsley as Secretary Treasurer of the Planning Advisory Committee, moved by Stephen, seconded by Mary. All in favor? Carried.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
Project updates, new official plan project update. Yvonne.
Thank you. Carl is here to correct me if I'm wrong in any of this, but the OP Review Committee continues to meet. They had a staff visioning workshop in November, late November, with the key themes again of transportation, housing, community spaces, sustainability, and the downtown revitalization. For each of these, they looked at a foundational guide and set out strategic directions or potential strategic directions, such as with housing, diverse, inclusive communities, sufficient supply, and a range of housing types and affordability, and making sure they're adequate. Transportation, they looked at accessible and efficient travel options. For the revitalization, trying to develop a vibrant, inclusive center, including advanced services, heritage assets, community partnerships, strategic funding, all in an effort to develop a strong sense of place within the downtown core. Community spaces, they looked at public-private owned community spaces, diverse users, innovative designs, community engagement and accessibility. And for sustainability, looking at the 4 pillars of economic vitality, social inclusion, environmental stewardship, and cultural vibrancies. Staff put together a draft vision that will be brought to council on Monday evening, hoping that council will review, approve, modify, whatever they deem required as for the draft vision, as well as the 5 themes. So we'll have more to report after that meeting.
Okay, thank you. Anything else?
Yes, so that is an important to build on Yvonne. That is a very important decision point, and that also that vision will be the guiding principle for sort of outlining council's guiding vision for what you want the town to look like in 25 years. So the report is on the agenda. Accompanying that report will be a separate report along with a brief prepared by our planning consultants, Dylan, who are looking at preliminary plans and visions for the 4 opportunity areas. So you'll recall that when we released the scope for this project, we wanted to have a closer look at 4 underdeveloped areas of the town: Gallipo Center, the south end of Lawrence Street, so past the business park, that those 18 acres of mostly town-owned land between Ferguson and Ferrera behind the Canadian Tire, as well as the Cornelia and Daisy Street corridor. So that's sort of the gateway at the north end of town. All of these we're anticipating that most of the development of the roughly 3,200 residents we're expecting to move into the community in the next 25 years, as well as our additional employment lands. Most of that's probably going to take place in these areas. So we want to have a closer look at sort of developing those highest and best use policies for that. So a separate companion piece will be going to council on Monday. So both of those reports are now live with the agenda. The consultants are also working on actually drafting the official plan itself. So as you know, we're administering a new official plan rather than just a comprehensive series of amendments to the current one. Obviously, we have a pretty good OP right now, so we're working with that. But one of the important things, of course, is in drafting a new OP is we have to accommodate provincial priorities. We have to sort of incorporate those opportunity areas, those studies and reports that have been done over the last number of years, but also just undertake some housekeeping amendments. So I think staff have worked with and not just in our department, but other departments have worked with the current official plan for many years. And I think while we like the document as a whole, there's little things that kind of annoy us or sort of act as impediments to what we really want to achieve. So the steering committee will be meeting tomorrow to sort of develop a list of housekeeping, and that includes Yvonne as well as certain department heads. We'll be meeting tomorrow to develop a list of housekeeping amendments that we'd like to see accommodate in the new official plan. So that's getting into a little bit more of the granular details. So right now, We're expecting to see a first draft of the new OP in staff's hand for review probably in early April. But to make that first draft review a little bit less grueling, we're looking to sort of provide some preliminary direction to the consultants now while they're drafting it, so that we can at least sort of get off on the right foot in terms of accommodating the changes that we'd like to see in addition to the changes that they're recommending. So we'll be meeting tomorrow and getting that feedback over to them hopefully by the end of next week.
Thank you. Next meeting is Thursday, April 10th, 2025. Call for an adjournment, motion for adjournment.
Oh, I'm always ready.
Okay. Adjourned. Thank you. Thank you, everybody.
Okay, I'll just let Tech know we're done.
Congratulations.